you listening?
Welcome, folks, to the Craic'n Coachin podcast, and today we are joined with Mr. Nick Gloff, and we've actually already started a bit of a conversation and delved into the hybrid rock stars. Emmett just asked why he thinks that a lot of people are transitioning from the blood and guts of bodybuilding into Hyrox, and he has a couple of hot takes, a couple of opinions here. So we'll give him the mic and see what he has to say.
All right, so hello everybody. Now, hot take number one. I think part of the thing that's happening with people moving over to like the Hyrox and the hybrid athlete stuff in total is coming from a bit of an overwhelm for people that have tried to fit themselves into the bodybuilding world, where they thought that they identified with it in their younger years when they had more intensity to them, and they thought they could take it a little bit further than what they could. And the intensity of it and the inability to break through to next levels and really get to where their original goals and aspirations were has them, instead of trying to double down and go in that direction further, going in another one that allows them to kind of be mediocre in everything and still be at the higher levels of what is considered to be good at something. I think that's a large part of it. And then another part of it is going to be that I am 28. How old are you guys?
Same, Matthew. Emmett's like 42 or something.
29.
Okay. All right, so we're about the same age group, and guys our age and a little bit older than us, because people came in before us and we looked to them for guidance with the direction things are going. I think a lot of those guys, they have graduated themselves out of being bodybuilders largely, and the start of that transition happens with the older athletes also finding that there's a ceiling in this that they don't want to push past for good reasons, not always bad ones, that they need to pivot so that their health can remain better for longer. They might have families starting and they want to be here for a long time. They understand that being 300 pounds isn't going to be all that conducive to playing with their kids on the floor and being able to chase after them in the yard and play ball, which all makes sense, all good reasons. But there's also, I think, with the social media influence of things, we've gotten a lot of overwhelm from the media that we get and consume, where we have the highlight reels of everything that everyone does. There's not a whole lot of a highlight reel to be had with just training, really. We have, and we know this from what even YouTube and the popular creators of bodybuilding have done in the last 10 years, as this has become a staple for media consumption for bodybuilders. We all know the phrase blood and guts because that was an infamous video that was put together of one of the most brutal trainers that has ever lived. And it was immortalized on video to show us what that was. That's still a highlight reel, but it's a highlight reel that captures something that we see not in the same light because it doesn't show up in the same way anymore. We have long form videos of athletes doing an hour of standing in between machines and talking bullshit between sets, and then getting in and doing a half-ass set and then standing up and going, yeah, that was good enough, and then moving on and then talking about some other random topic in between, which isn't a bad thing necessarily. It's more realistic. But we have a lot more of that happening, and it kind of blurs the line of like where's the aspiration go to now? If the thing that all of us can reach at as athletes in our own right is going as intensely as we can in the gym and making it something for ourselves, so it's an event every time that we do it that we enjoy, it's now had this lens draped over it that makes it less and less of the ideal to be that intense trainee and more to emulate the people that we see the most doing what we're doing. And less of that media is telling us that the ideal is taking it as far as you can take it, pushing yourself as much as you can. We have the fatigue debate that's going on constantly. We have people moving left and right with all of their direction that they want to go. Are they bodybuilding anymore or are they not? Are they doing this for health or are they not? Are they trying to be competitors anymore or are they not? these things end up sitting into the subconscious for all of us, and we start thinking about, like, is this actually the path I want to go? Do I have the ability to be this intense? Is the mental stimulation I'm getting all the time making it impossible for me to lock in for my training so I can achieve this anyway? So does it make it easier for me to just go on a run because I'm out of shape, and the running makes it intense, where lifting doesn't do that anymore? And then you feel that runner's high or whatever it is, or you do your first 20 burpees and you can't breathe. Like, oh, I feel intensity again, and I didn't have to work that hard for it. You didn't have to do the 600-pound squat to find it. You had to go and move your body for a continuous minute instead. So it lowers the bar for how intense you need to be to actually get that result of that feeling that we had when we were younger, and we had all that fire in us to go and chase big things. I think that's a big part of it.
It's a very good answer, to be fair. Do you also think that it is the access to the sport, and maybe just fire off some keywords there of, like, maybe coaches underselling the fact that, like, PEDs do quite a lot for bodybuilders, that you are going to have to sacrifice certain things in your life? And with Hyrox being so popular at the minute, is it because it's easier to convince a client to do a Hyrox and to give them a goal rather than trying to convince them of the long-term benefits of actually stepping on stage?
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's a lot more talk, more transparently now more than ever, about the downsides of PED use and what it's going to do for the long term. And we have a lot more of those people that are actually experiencing it telling us their stories straight up out in the open without covering it up. We didn't have that for a very long time. I mean, even I remember, I would say, like, my college years, like 7 years ago, you wouldn't really hear much about, like, PEDs being talked about in the open. There were only a couple people that were. There was, like, the Jordan Peters of the world, and people that are, like, more so just, like, right in that pocket of people that started around him, that started talking about that stuff more openly. And as that stuff became more open, it just ended up becoming everybody talks about it. And originally, it was tactical advice or things that they were doing for themselves, and it was going against the narratives that were already in place for how those things work, which cleared up a lot of confusion, which was good. But now it's so ubiquitous that people don't exactly know yet what it's going to do until you see it happen to somebody in person. You can hear all the scary stuff as theory or what you might see on lab work, but you don't know how that affects somebody until you see your 10th post on Instagram as you're scrolling, like, oh, another bodybuilder with heart failure at 35. Oh no. Another bodybuilder that has a clot that they didn't know about, that now they have this problem that they're not going to be able to train because they had to get it operated and pulled out of their leg. They didn't know it was coming. Oh no. They have these memory loss issues that they didn't know was going to be coming. They can't function like they used to. They have to be on dialysis. Like, stuff like that actually becomes more common to be seen, where before, 10 years ago, it's like, well, is it going to hurt you? Is it not? Is it super scary? Is it not? Is it just blown up out of proportion because we don't have a lot of medical science to tell us exactly what happens with long-term use? We didn't have all those answers yet. We just had theory, and then some people that were willing to talk about it. Now everyone talks about it. And we have people that have actually done the decades of use that can stand and say, like, yeah, this is what it's done to me. It's what it's currently doing. This is what I have to do to counteract it. So we've got a lot of that too. But on the positive side of that as well, we've gotten a lot smarter with all of those things too. So it's been balanced out somewhat, where all the scary stuff is there, but all of the smart stuff on how you can prevent those issues to a large degree or work around them when they come up is now more common to find as well. It is easy, though, for you to market to people that are more, and here's another portion of the social media lens, there's a couple of them, but for the majority of people that are pivoting towards that, it is an easier lifestyle, that's for sure. It does cover more of the fundamental fitness capabilities that we need to have as human beings, so you're not the 300-pound dude that can't walk up a flight of stairs, which sounds really cool until you're there. Or even one of my favorites is, for a long time, I had guys that would use, like, having to use a CPAP to sleep.
Oh, yeah,
as, like, yeah. I had guys that were like sub 200 pounds that are like, my goal is to need a CPAP because I'm so big. Great. You want to have one of the major causes of renal and heart failure to start? Like, okay. You having obstructive sleep apnea for a long time will do that to you. You just want that just so you can say you're big enough. Like, that's crazy. But okay. All right. So we've got those things that have happened, and we have the social media lens now to show the highlight reels of what goes on and who is it that we're marketing to mostly. If you have the larger majority of people that are in the coaching realm now, because it's not just dominated by like real powerhouse individuals, we've got more normal fitness people where the fitness genre of business is the biggest it's ever been. And it's the most accessible for people to get into for them to provide their own services. And with that, you're going to have people that came up through bodybuilding that had aspirations in it, and then they find that they can't really get to that highest peak personally themselves for whatever reason that might be. And where is your niche then? Where is your own personal achievement going to come from? So do you continue going in the direction that you're not the most successful in yourself to begin with and you don't have a whole lot of future in? Or do you pivot to something else that's more personally fulfilling to you because you can actually progress and improve and be someone in it, at least for yourself? And then you can draw in more regular lifestyle people that will pay your bills as a coach. Do you do that? You might want to. So it makes it a business proposition as much as anything else. So another one of the lenses here with the social media stuff that I think is relevant is with the transition away from like the blood and guts really hard training as being the default that people are searching for and trying to make happen for themselves. I think we also have just a generalized overstimulated population. Like, we're always getting bombarded with information, and this is a played out thing. Everyone said this. But one of the deeper things that we have happen with the overstimulation is that you don't actually get the proper wiring to happen anymore with your normal phasic releases of stress hormone related responses. So what would make training really hard possible and then enjoyable is a normal rhythm of these stress related response hormones that are going to help you with chasing pain because it's pleasurable. Majorly androgens actually do that directly. Higher androgens are going to have you seek pain and have it feel more pleasurable. You don't have that to the same degree. You won't have that seeking for it because it won't be enjoyable for you. So you'll shy away from it. If you don't have a proper balance of parasympathetic to sympathetic arousal states and your circadian rhythm is messed up and underlying hormonal things aren't proper, you're not going to get the appropriate difference between your resting baseline level of stimulation versus what it needs to be for you to turn on and go to that place to really train intensely. Your baseline's being raised because we're always stimulated by something, whether you're listening to a podcast all the time, you're listening to music all the time, you're scrolling on social media all the time, you're never unpacking the stuff that you're passively ingesting. Then when you go and try to do something highly stimulative, you don't have a big difference between where you're at constantly versus where you need the excessive stimulation and arousal so that you can go and lock in and do it and enjoy it. We don't have that so much at a baseline level because everyone's inundated with stimulation all the time. And because of the way that modern life works, it's hard to avoid it for most, especially for those that are the most plugged into the community, because everyone runs their own businesses online. So online is the medium. You have to be present for it. You're learning online. You're spreading your own education online. You're talking to people online. You're doing all these things through mediums that are overstimulative to begin with at a baseline level and generated to be that way, with tools that are also overstimulative based off of how they're just designed themselves, with the blue light spectrum and the really high flicker rate with all of the lights that we use, and then the screens and everything. That adds to that as well. So we have all of these things that are pushing our baseline level of arousal up so that when we need to go there, we can't. If you're ineffective at going there with your training over long windows of time, you're not going to enjoy it as much. If you don't enjoy it as much, you're going to try and find novelty that is going to help you to feel that activation again which is going to happen from you doing new novel challenges that are going to be less effortful for you to actually get to a place that it's difficult. So you can do, like I said, you do 20 burpees for your first time, and it's crazy because you haven't moved like that. But you go and do a set of 6 on squats, and you're like, all right.
Been there and done it.
Yeah. So that novelty and that lower bar for the overall stimulation for you to feel like you're learning something, so it's stimulative to your brain enough that this is interesting to you rather than you doing the same rehearsed pattern you've done a million times. That's part of it. And then new challenges, new benchmarks for you to set, and then for you to break from a lower set point is also more stimulative to you as well. You're going to want to do that more than just getting another 5 pounds on your hack squat. So I think all of those things play a role in where this has gone. And I think it's easier to make a highlight reel of you doing a whole bunch of different things and making it look really intense rather than just lifting stuff, because most people can't actually go there to make it look interesting anyway.
Yeah. And on top of that as well, whenever you do see someone lift, like, you usually know what they're lifting, whereas when it comes to a Hyrox workout, for example, like, you don't know where they're at the workout, you don't know what they're actually doing, what intensity they've brought. But as you say, if someone has 600 pounds in their back, they've got 600 pounds in their back.
Yep. And then the guy that can put 600 pounds on their back is going to look the same on an assault bike as somebody that can't.
Yeah.
They're still going to be huffing and puffing the same. It doesn't say anything about how proficient you are. It's just effort. And it's the same thing that you can say if you got somebody that's getting the video done and they're getting a close-up of them doing a squat, but you don't see the weight on the bar. It looks really intense, but they might be doing 135 pounds versus 600, and you don't know the difference unless you zoom out.
Everything's for the highlight reel.
Yeah. It all is. It all is.
We were going to dive into a bit of a question, and just listening to you, to be honest, I actually understand the answer to it already, but I'm going to ask it anyway. We had Jordan Shallows on, maybe about a month ago or so, and he quoted this. He says he wouldn't talk to anyone or take anyone under 25 seriously, and as far as I'm aware, that he actually went out looking for you around, how many years ago now was it? Maybe 4, 6, maybe, whenever you were on his podcast. But as a young coach, you clearly earned the conversation, and I was going to ask you, what did you do as a young coach to actually find yourself that credible, or like to highlight yourself in front of some of the best in the industry? Bar just being a strong motherfucker as well.
Well, I was going to say that's probably the biggest thing. I think that's probably the biggest thing that made the difference there, especially for Shallow. Because I first messaged him to talk to him when I was still in college. So I was still in college, and I remember being in my apartment, just basically attached to the college. It was kind of somewhat like dorm housing, but just off. It was a business related anyway. So living there, I remember texting back and forth with him, sending in emails to be like, hey, I'd really like to talk to you. Maybe you could come on my podcast, because I had one at the time. And it was very, very small. I only did like 5 episodes or something. I didn't stick to it. But I had other stuff going on. So you guys are better at this than me to begin with. I'm better as a guest than I am as a host. So back then I just kind of sent that out there. And I think at the time his bar for talking to people was lower too. I think at this point, with the amount of time that he spent doing this, it should be higher. But back then, I think one of the things that brought in interest for me was that I was 19, 20, 21, and I was doing strength feats that most people don't get to do for a whole career. And I was doing it as a bodybuilder, but doing things in a powerlifting style, but was not doing it in a way that was going to really benefit me in either directly. Just building up everything that I could to try and be a crazy athlete was really the goal. And I did that doing both styles at the same time. And I was able to talk about it. So I wasn't just like, because you could go online and find some random 15-year-old kid in Texas that could double my squat like no problem. Just some random kid at a Texas high school that's doing like an 800-pound squat just because he's built that way. And those guys often they're just crazy athletes. They're built that way, and they just do that. They're interesting. They're cool to look at and cool to see the human potential, but they're not usually going to be able to tell you what's going on. And I was able to do both, and I was also talking some good shit back then. So I was a bit more aggressive back then because I was young and full of piss and vinegar, if that's a phrase that you guys have over there.
We understand it.
Yeah. So I had some spicy takes back then that caught some attention, mostly because it was somebody that shouldn't have standing to say it, but I could go and say it and then go like, hey, are you doing this? Because I am. You've been doing this for 15 years and you can't do this? Well, then shut up. That's it. Like, can you squat 700 pounds yet? Then shut up. That's it. Come and argue, because I'll tell you how.
Surely you were lifting it way more proficiently than, like you said there, you know, you're going to go find a young footballer in Texas. It was just, I think what caught Jordan's eye was actually not just the weight, but also the way you moved it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's been the same thing that most people have commented over my stuff for a very long time, is that I've done it with quality. And the understanding of why the quality was important was more so the draw, I think, because I understood the mechanics. I was in school for the mechanics. I was learning it for that purpose, so I could be the best athlete that I could using those tools I was picking up along the way. So instead of me just doing the thing as I'm just lifting, I'm just trying to get on stage, I'm just trying to do this, the goal was accumulate as much information as I could so I could build a framework that would be provable through my own efforts, would show to be usable and applicable to people so that they could become the best athletes possible, specifically in strength sport, which was not exactly what bodybuilding is or was, still isn't, but it was also at the same time that we had because in that window of time that I was doing those things was when the big strength feats of major bodybuilders were the thing. That was when Jordan Peters was getting really big. That's when James Hollingshead was really getting started with going hard. It's when Luke Sando, rest in peace, was still around and doing the things he was doing, and people were starting to take notice, like, hey, we don't just do sets of 10 to 20 and get a pump and that's it. Like, you can actually be a good athlete and do these things, train hard, and it gives you the result that you're looking for, where otherwise you could just be doing pumps to nowhere and get absolutely nothing from it, unless you're a genetic freak that can do it yourself without doing having to do anything effortful. Most people don't get exposure to that or see that you can build anything with the proof behind it that you have to put in effort at that point. It was more so this magical black box that no one fully understood how to apply. So we had old knowledge of how people had done it prior, and we had competing camps of you lift heavy, you lift hard. We had the blood and guts style, and then we had the get a pump and leave it alone style, and then the drug overlay with that, how that helps you, how it doesn't. Like, not all of that was fleshed out yet, but nobody was talking about really how the mechanics of lifting and the physiology of it was playing a role. And that was something that I brought in along with the mechanics that was not really a big conversation yet. So I think that's most of what brought Shallow into wanting to talk to me, is because I was one of the people that could speak on it from experience, and having done it in a short enough window of time to say that the method actually seems to work. And it goes counter to what a lot of the advice at the time was. You can't do it in that short of a window. You can't grow that, get that strong and grow. It's two different methods of training. You can't mix them. They're different goals for different things. Nope.
The method was clash at some point.
Yep.
So you were the first optimal meathead.
I think I could say I was one of the early generations. Yes, I can't say that I was the first. I think that would be a little too audacious of me to do, because there were people definitely before me that were more meathead and more successful at it than me. But like I said, a portion of that was me talking some good game. Like, I could talk some good shit, and then I could back it up enough that I had a standing in the room. And that's what got me to be able to stand in the room with Jordan and talk through things. Like a couple years ago, did a seminar where I was a guest speaker with him for a lower body seminar in Tampa. So
Very good.
that wouldn't have been something that would have been possible if I hadn't already proven that I could do that kind of thing. You wouldn't have somebody that could just do a strength feat, show up and actually speak on anything if you couldn't actually provide any value in a room of other very highly educated individuals, of which I think everyone else there had more furthering education officially than I did. Yeah.
It's very impressive.
So, yeah.
I think, Nick, a big proponent of probably your early bodybuilding, your success, and what drew eyeballs was probably what we've mentioned, the strength. There's literally I know you've done an episode on the J3 University podcast, and the title of it is literally that your 800-pound squat had ruined your prep. We can maybe speak a little bit about that, because most maybe bodybuilders would assume being able to shift that amount of weight and being brutally strong can definitely be a positive thing. But maybe for you, having that level of strength was actually something you had to manage a bit more carefully, and maybe that is also what has allowed you to lift with a level of proficiency as well as blending that strength. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that experience in terms of your own bodybuilding, and maybe the prep itself, and managing that sort of level of fatigue that comes with being silly strong.
Mm-hmm. So it's a good title line for that podcast, that's for sure. The extra context is it was completely unnecessary for me to be doing those things in prep. It was totally unnecessary. The overall strength on the movements that I could have done in replacement to that work likely would not have done to me what I did to myself by doing it the way that I did. So that was me being a little bit too stubborn and hard-headed with my decision making, and deciding that I wanted to do it the way I wanted to do it, and fatigue be damned. So what I wanted to do was be able to do my 700 plus front squat and 800 plus back squat the same time during prep. Wasn't the wisest decision. Yeah, you wouldn't tell anybody that you're coaching into show that we're going to try and go for all-time records on strength on basic movements, because that's not the time for it. So, yeah, I made the unwise young decision to say, I'm going to do this because why not? And that did bite me. However, the underlying thing is that having greater overall strength can be a bit of an issue for you with managing your fatigue levels, and it would have hit me regardless in some way. Oh, no, we're good. Sorry, I had an app update that crossed my screen. We're good. So the issue comes from you having to do some level of balancing with the overall exposure of total work that you do in any window of time, while still being stimulated enough for you to get the tissue retention that you needed throughout that whole window. You're fighting against fatigue from all of the pressures of the prep itself, and the training itself is one of them, but the training is a required fatigue that you need, because if you don't have it, you don't retain the tissue at all. If you are somebody that does have the acquired or natural strength to the degree that you're putting yourself under a lot of fatigue for every bout of movement that you do, you're going to be fighting against a rock and a hard place in your decisions, because the lowest level of stimulation you can get, you can still do. You can just piss around with whatever weights you want and get something, but it's not going to be enough when you're at deep enough phases of prep and a deficit for you to keep the tissue anymore. If you want to be really judicious about how much total work you're doing, you could try to lean harder into doing the larger strength feats and push yourself that way so you do less total work. But you land in two different places by doing those things. You either have to do a larger amount of total volume that's less stimulative, which is still going to have associated breakdown to the tissues locally, and it's still going to be an expense of time for you to get through it, which is something that's limited for you anyways. Your amount of time that you can be stimulated for within training, you can be at that high arousal state while it being effective, is not as long as it otherwise would be. If you continue to push on it to try and get more total work done while it's not fully stimulative, you're just going to have to fight against that battle. And if you're very strong and you have to do it that way, then you're adding in a lot of extra time, a lot of extra volume to try and hit the targets you need. If you go the opposite direction, then you also have to have really higher peaks of that arousal for every time that you do any movement that you did. So you're fighting in two different directions all the time. If you're not that strong, then you don't have as much of a battle there. You don't have yourself moving loads at a threshold that, no matter how strong you've gotten, no matter how much you've adapted, is still going to be stressful physiologically. No matter how strong you are, you get to a relative amount of your total strength, and it's going to be stressful on your body. But if that relative amount that's close enough to your full potential is at an absolute load total that is going to be stressful for any human body, it's still going to run into more issues. So if I was doing things at 60% of what I could do, the absolute loading total is still above the threshold that would have been fatiguing for the human body regardless. So you have to find a middle ground and weave in just enough work in just the right way with just enough load that you can balance out those things. So I'll tell people is, most people will say like, oh, it's really cool to be that strong. Like it's cool until it's not. It's cool until it produces more issues for you to balance things out. And with my own athletes, I see the same thing. The athletes that are naturally weaker, that don't really accumulate strength progressions nearly as well, hold up a lot better in high fatigue states. They don't have to be as heavily stimulated as the other person that's a lot stronger to be able to retain the tissue that they have. They've built it with a lower total amount of stress to their body to begin with, because it's not at an absolute load that is always going to be difficult for the body to tolerate. Not just for the muscle tissues, but for the nervous system to be able to handle consistently going there. And then for all of the other related tissues that also need to be able to recover between things. They adapt over time with stressors, just like everything else does, but if you have less resources to be able to do that with, and you're always condensing a lot of that work into short windows of time, as we always do, because we need to have the muscle tissue stimulated enough to remain, you're still putting in more stressors on those other tissues that need that recovery as well. And those will have decay problems also. So you'll have more nagging little injury issues or even larger ones that may come up in that stronger person, that the other that doesn't have to train that hard to keep it, they don't have it. It's not that big of a deal. So it does produce its own issues. You can get around it. I could have, being smarter about it back then, I could have gotten around it, but I did not, because I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And it's one of the things that the wisdom of age teaches you in hindsight after you do something like that.
I think as well, you know, not to say you don't take bodybuilding seriously, but you wanted to fuck around and find out. You wanted to actually like go against the narrative. And it is also people like you that also start Chinese whispers in situations like this too, where, you know, people will hear, oh, this guy, you know, was lifting extremely heavy during prep, and then on down the line it ends up down at some guy in Ireland who's only 20 years old, has fuck all muscle, and he's like, yeah, I get told by my coach I shouldn't be lifting heavy during prep because, you know, it causes fatigue. And it's like, well, it's not the case at all. You've just heard this Chinese whisper coming down from the guy that did the extreme, and now you're trying to apply it to your own life.
Yeah, it doesn't count that way. It's the absolute versus relative thresholds that you're experiencing is the problem, and whether you can navigate the balance of total work and how you're getting it done. That's the difference maker. So if you're trying to do the massive strength feats when you're under higher stresses to begin with, you're going to deal with consequences. I dealt with consequences. It doesn't mean that it's the same thing that you'd expect if you're not nearly at that level and trying to push for those things. You doing a set of 8 on a hack squat with the relative strength that you can do, that isn't going to be so heavy and difficult on your body that you're expecting a lot of breakdown from it, or just pushing over the stimulatory threshold beyond the point that you can recover easily, then you're gonna have issues. But if you don't cross that threshold, you won't nearly as much. It'll be directed towards what you need, and you can keep the balance of how much you're exposing yourself to relative to how much you can actually retain and do continuously without having larger amounts of breakdown for all the systems involved that'll end up crashing you and burning you out. There's a constant balance there when you're under higher stressors, specifically in prep, where you have to be judicious about exactly how you're going about it. If you try to go for those crazy strength feats, you're going to get bit. Is going to happen. How much are you willing to accommodate for it is the question. If you're being smart about it, you don't try to attempt those things or try to do it continuously, because it's not going to be that intelligent to put yourself into that kind of fatigue state so much that you're pressing on all the other systems that are now going to not respond the way that you want, and now it's more complicated for the whole process to get done.
Do you think it's worth athletes in their first preps actually pushing those limits a wee bit more, and also to actually go in from like a coach's standpoint, or like using our coach's eye, like how as a coach do you distinguish someone that's genuinely that needs to pull back, or someone's just hiding behind the recovery mechanism and, you know, maybe just experiencing the suck of prep?
It's a tough one. That's a tough one, because everyone is made of different metal. That's going to be the issue with everybody. And that's why it takes a personal approach of knowing, as a coach, you're looking at somebody and you can tell what they're able to do. You have to have eyes on it to start with. You have to be able to see it. So if you're not seeing video of somebody training for you to know where they're actually taking it to, you're not going to have any clue. So that's one part of it. The other thing is just a personality difference, that as you get more into coaching and you deal with more and more people, you'll start to be able to categorize people based off of their responses to you and how they talk about the way that they do things. There's going to be different personality types that are going to be better or worse at being able to really go there, and you'll start to learn those people. So the ones that are going to be better at being able to go there, they're usually going to be a bit less heady, a little bit less analytical. They're going to just do the work and not think too much about it, which typically is a good thing. You can also give them direction, and they'll usually follow it because they don't know to tell you no, because they're not going to argue with you about the mechanisms involved. Those people typically are going to go there better, and then you can pull them back. It's far better to have somebody that is less read on it and give them instructions that they'll understand, rather than somebody that is way too heady, way too thoughtful about it, and then they think that they might know better because they're looking at one potential principle or one potential mechanism and not seeing the whole picture for what it is, just because they understand the depth of at least one portion of the equation without knowing the same depth on others, which is the big issue. Just because you know something, one thing, to depth in one area, doesn't mean that that is going to be automatically the most important thing that you understand about the entire topic at large. Which is a big issue generally within the bodybuilding world that I see. Because you can have one specific niche of information that someone may learn. So let's say in the fatigue versus like high fatigue, low fatigue, high loads, lower rep targets versus high, like what are we going to do that's most effective? And we have some people that are going to pigeonhole themselves into one side of the argument that are going to have great arguments to say about it because they've learned very specifically the mechanisms that are pinpointed by the way that you're approaching it that direction. But they're not going to have the same depth of understanding to all of the other portions of the same equation. And because they know more detail about the one, they're going to automatically, in their head, without them even thinking about it in a conscious way, think that I understand this depth over here, this all makes sense. This other part does not make sense because I don't know the depth. And now, because I know this one to more degree, and it makes sense, this is the only thing that matters. So you'll just go in that direction. So when you have an athlete that is overly analytical, and they're usually going to be pigeonholed into whatever it is that they've ingested the most, because luckily enough our algorithms do that to us, If you see one thing and you like it, then you're going to see much more of that thing. If you like one personality talking about it, you're going to see more of that one person talking about it. If you have one delivery mechanism for your learning and it's consistently in that direction, you're only going to learn in that direction. So you'll learn those things and you won't learn the other things that also are important for the same problem that you're trying to solve. And then you have those people that are the over analytical types that will look at that and then take it the wrong direction. You'll have to argue with them about how that works. So how do you actually practically go about it as a coach, seeing those people, first timers, and figuring it out for them? Usually the best direction is tell them to go as hard as possible. Push them as much as you can, because you will find out where the wheels fall off. And then you can always do the magic trick of pulling back and then things get better. And if you pull back and it doesn't get better, then you've learned that they've got other problems. And usually you'll find those out too if you're doing your job and asking the right questions. You'll see that they have other issues in the rest of their life that makes the things they're doing in training no longer effective. The overall fatigue that they're managing is too high, not from the training, but from everything else. And then you can learn what that is and you can fix it from there. So kind of goes back to a portion of the original conversation, is like the overstimulation problem that we have generally. If you have somebody that's going through prep and they're a first timer, what are they going to be doing with most of their time in their day? Their free time.
On social media, potentially?
Thinking about food probably as well.
Thinking about food, social
Looking at
media.
food.
Yeah. They're going to be watching as many YouTube videos of bodybuilders going through prep as they possibly can. That's typical. So if they're going through and doing that constantly and they're building up this thing in their head, then what are they going to do with the information that you give them to try and get them to calm down about one direction or another you're trying to push it? They're always going to have a conflict in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're going to have... Go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say,
No,
do you think that this is how coaches... Because we tend to see this here quite often, where maybe a client will all of a sudden leave a coach on the back end of prep. But do you think this is where some coaches can be quite smart at times with what they actually put out on social media, almost making their niche one of the mechanisms? So like knowing that clients are going to be getting it hard with fatigue, with low food, and then putting it out there that, yeah, I get my clients shredded on loads of food and hardly any cardio, and I actually look at their volume and bring it really low.
No, I don't think it's wise. I don't think it's wise, because as soon as you have somebody that's bought into that style and they come to you expecting that, and they're not a person that will respond to it, your entire value proposition has collapsed in front of you in a moment. Mm-hmm. If your whole thing is, I can get people in shape with no cardio and high food, and then you have somebody that comes to you, a large portion of people that will come to you that didn't do the due diligence to begin with for them to have a high enough food base. They haven't done all the things on their underlying health to make sure that their adrenal hormones are proper, their thyroid hormones are proper, micronutrition is proper, sex hormones are proper. You don't have all those things dialed. You don't have circadian biology taken care of. They're not taking care of daily behavioral modifications so that you can actually fit in all the things that you need and keep everything moving. They don't take care of those things. They don't know about them. They know that you will get them in shape with no cardio and high food. Okay, so they come in and you try to keep them on high food and no cardio. Now what lever do you have to pull?
Fuck all.
Yeah, you don't. You got nothing. Yeah, you got nothing. So now you're going to be stuck with people that will come to you that are going to see that, because they're going to come to that person because they don't want to put in effort. They don't want to suffer through having low food. They don't want to suffer through doing a lot of cardio. And so they're going to go to you because you're giving them the easy way. It's like seeing any other marketing of any other business. Oh, you're going to make 100K in 2 months doing this fancy thing with Claude. Like, I'll show you in 10 minutes.
Sign me up right now.
Yeah. You're going to make $1 million this year because you know how to do this marketing scheme. Okay. It's the same thing. It's like, all right, so I can just tell this thing to go do this job and I don't have to do anything. Awesome. Sign me up. It's the same thing for the coach that is marketing. I'm going to do this way. Don't worry about it. You can get in shape better than everyone else by doing none of the things that they have to do. Great. All right. So as soon as you get smacked with reality for the majority of people that can't do that, what do? You do nothing. You can't. So you have somebody that has gotten the experience with you that you are not giving a complete service, and now you don't have that pool of people that will come back. And if you do end up getting them on stage because you still hold to this marketing style and this is your promise, you don't deliver on it. You maybe put them on stage still because you don't care that much, because if you're marketing that way, you don't really have the experience to know that you have different people with different needs that you'll have to address. They are going to leave after prep because you didn't get them in shape.
Look like a
And
bag
then
of milk on stage.
Yeah. Yeah. And then that shows just how little you cared about their process, because you just tried to put them into the same funnel that everyone else you've tried to push into. Maybe was successful for some, but not for others. That person doesn't have a good experience, and now you have a person that can talk all the shit that they want, and that's going to grow and grow as you get more and more people that don't fall into that funnel that are all going to have the same story. Yeah.
Sorry, Emmett, far away. You're going to talk.
Nick, something that seems apparent just through the conversation we've had so far is social media and the potential issues that have come about specifically for bodybuilding through social media. And I actually have noticed over the past couple of years you have been a lot less active on socials. And then I was maybe trying to find out prior to our conversation why that might have been, and I heard you actually said that it was one of the best things you've actually done for yourself and your business, and maybe like based on what we've spoken about, the dopamine, the quick dopamine of social media being a problem for bodybuilders, particularly maybe first timers, and then the skewed perception of reality and what it actually takes to do this for a long time, and then maybe I think you also may have spoken about the tribalism and the rat race that can come from social media. If you want to speak a little bit about that. And I noticed you're maybe back on at least Instagram, and yeah, just the transition away from that and maybe coming back and what that's been like.
Yep. So the ways that it's been positive and the reasons for me doing it in the first place, the conversations that were being had at the time where I decided that I was going to step back largely was because it was all so repetitive and it wasn't really giving more value to people to continue to have the same arguments over the same things with the same people continuously, because it wasn't bringing any further depth to the conversations that were being had. There wasn't more practical advice to be given. There wasn't more troubleshooting that needed to be done in principle, because most of what had to be said around the topics that I was talking about was already said. So that was part of it. I didn't really want to continue to re-churn out more and more of the same stuff I've said 100 times, because I'd said it 100 times. And for me, and for anyone that has ever followed me for any length of time, you mostly from way back when I actually posted consistently, everything that I posted had a purpose. Every caption I wrote was as long as the caption could possibly go until I hit the character limit. Every time. And that's the way that I did it, because that's what I found to be valuable to people for them to take in. If I had something that was valuable to say, I was going to say it. If I didn't have something valuable to say, I didn't say it. I didn't use it purely as a marketing mechanism. Not very good business sense in that way. I just put out what I thought was going to be good for people to think about and for them to apply. And then talk about things that I was doing and the reasons why I was. Now, I also had the forethought at the time, after being the young guy that was doing stuff and talking a lot of shit. The one thing that I did not have was the long-term experience of being able to stand on principle for the things that I could provide for other people, rather than only producing it for myself and standing on that as my evidence. I had a lot of knowledge gained, a lot of principles that I could stand behind because they were already fleshed out ideas that really proved themselves out either in evidence that was already very clear, or emerging to be evidence that was going to be clear relatively soon after, or were already hypothesized from mechanisms that were understood greatly, and they just needed more time, and they ended up showing through eventually anyways. So, knowing that, I was talking a lot about those things, but I didn't have 10 years of producing results for people. I was the young guy talking a big game, and that was the one thing that I always had to fight against was, all right, well, you could talk all this shit, you could have all this knowledge, but what is it that you can do? Show me. Okay, all right, so I'll show you. So I just hunkered down, I got off of social media, and I just produced results for athletes over and over and over and over again for years without really saying anything about it. And that helped to produce the long track record of working with, from the lowest level, just normal lifestyle people trying to get into better shape, all the way up to Olympians that need to fix issues. And did that for years. And at this point, there's more to be said. And there's also part of the benefit of me getting off of social media and pulling myself far enough away that I wasn't only inundating my own mental space with purely only bodybuilding, and specifically in the niche that I was most active in. I could then entertain a lot of other topics that would help me and build my skills and my understanding of things outside of that alone, which has helped me tremendously to be a more well-rounded person and a more well-rounded coach with the skills that I can provide. So back then, what I didn't have a lot of access to, because I wasn't exposed to purposefully, was a lot of things about deeper physiology for functional health. I wasn't really all that well read up on supplementation. I didn't know how to read blood work all that well. I didn't know how to look at a disease state and then see where that's going to cross over into everything else that we're doing. Didn't have to deal with any of those things because that's not what I marketed towards. That's not the people that I was getting. But as time went on, I found that more and more normal people and normal athletes that were coming in had those expressions of things that I would have been blind to if I had only pigeonholed myself further into exactly what I was doing and only doing that. So I got to learn other things, got to expose myself to them, see what my gaps were, and not just protect myself from everything else that could go under the radar entirely because I didn't have the toolkit for me to piece them apart and build them back up again. I needed that time away so that I could be honest with myself about where my deficiencies were so that I could go at them. Because prior to me even posting all the stuff that I did with training, that's what I was doing then. I was going through my education with the expressed goal of trying to learn as much as possible about training and muscular physiology so that I could be a dominant force in being able to do that. I could talk about it. One of my major goals through college was for me to do enough learning on my own as I was going through my formal education that I could argue with my professors. That was a goal that I had the whole time. I was annoying for some of my professors, but I also was actually doing that. Didn't always do it successfully. I wasn't always right. But I at least had arguments and ways of learning things that was able to bring new things to the conversation and open up different directions that brought me to new places that got me there. I did that without saying a single word about it to anybody. Just building up that knowledge base, trying to ask better questions, learning what I'm not seeing until I had enough observations and enough evidence for me to start speaking on it because I could apply it and then know that, hey, this has something. And this has something because of this. Or maybe this works here, but it doesn't work here. Does it work for this person, but not this person? Why might that be? I did that for that skill set. I didn't do it for the rest of them yet. So I pulled myself back.
You are basically becoming the Swiss Army knife.
That's the goal. Yeah. That's the goal.
I actually had a question there about your degree versus actually doing the job of coaching, but it sounds like you answered it quite well, which was like, where did education actually fail? Like generic education, but that's clearly where it was. You were at a point where you wanted to be able to have the answers for everything. And I totally agree with you as well. I feel like from time to time we use social media just to fill a gap, and it could be well used in other places. I believe as well with young coaches coming up and through educational resources as well, just doing their like level 2s and 3s with coaching. It's very pushed on them to become better at using social media, and they almost become social media experts before they actually become good coaches.
Mm-hmm. Yep, agreed. And my choices, specifically in the very beginning, before I decided I'm going to post every day because I wanted to build something, that is something that I told myself back then. So I'm going to do this every day so that I can build something, because what I wanted to do was deep lore for you guys that you can get here.
Head us with it.
Yeah. So when I was going through school, I didn't actually know what I was going to do with it. You need to step away, Emmett?
Nope.
No? Okay. I'm analyzing your posture a little too much, I guess.
No, all good. Sorry.
We do quite often need to pee, but we'll just hold it.
Well, if you need to, you can go ahead. I can vamp on camera as long as I need to. But when I was in, I didn't actually know what I wanted to do with it yet. I knew what my goal for myself personally was with it, but I didn't know what I was going to do professionally afterwards. I had a lot of different options that I was trying to explore whether or not I was interested enough in going there. I had thought throughout my education that I maybe was going to go and do masters and go towards PhD. I thought that I might have gone there, and that was one of the last options that I was thinking of doing. But I didn't really want to continue to go through education just to be more and more specified on one very minute portion of details, so that I could be somebody that could talk on such a narrow portion of the overall picture, because that's essentially what you get when you go further and further. You go undergrad, you learn a lot of basic stuff, you learn deeper stuff than you would find most other places, and usually better put together. And then you go into a master's program, you'll get a little bit more general knowledge at a deeper depth, but then you're going to learn some very specific niche pieces, which are going to be the basis for which you build into the next stage. Then once you go into PhD, it's you being a master of one very, very specific small detail. That's what it is. That was something I was interested in doing, but I didn't really know if that's the direction that I thought my life could go. And I thought also I could do cardiac rehab if I wanted to, because that was a course that I was able to take in college, luckily, because the college I went to actually provided some very, very cool different clinical routes other than just strength and conditioning through the exercise science program. So I had access to stuff like that. So that was a possibility. I could have gone into pre-med if I wanted to go and be like orthopedic direction, either being an orthopedic just therapist with PT stuff, or go further into actual pre-med to be a surgeon or whatever. All those things were possibilities that I had entertained at one point or another very seriously, but I didn't know what to do. And I thought throughout that whole time, like what I really want for myself is to be able to pursue my goals for me, not so much to do this service to some grand ideal that doesn't really get me or anyone else anywhere in the grand scheme. Go and do a master's and a PhD, like what does that serve? What is that going to end up doing for me? Am I going to be stuck in a school system that I just have to churn out some level of research all the time that doesn't necessarily have to mean anything? It's just a quota that you have to reach so you can pull in enough grant money for the education system. Like, okay, great. Do I continue with another 10 years of education for something I may not even be happy with doing on a day-to-day basis because I have to show up to an office to do the same humdrum every day? I don't know if I really want to do that either. So when I decided to start putting up post material and did it at the frequency that I did, it was for me to find a way into this world of bodybuilding so I could make it more of my life, because it was the only thing that really motivated me forward in a way that really got me to do stuff. The education that I got, to your original question, to some degree at least, the education that I got was pivotal. It was really, really important for me. Without that formal education, I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now. But I can't say the same thing about the program itself relative to the other people I went through it with. So a lot of those people don't do anything related to the field at this point, and that's a pretty large statistic over everything, is that most people that have a degree in most anything do not have employment within that field after they graduate. There's a giant number of people in the world that have that problem. And if you go through the traditional professional routes towards something, that the higher likelihood that you don't end up somewhere that is stable, long term, that you enjoy, that is going to actually do something for you. So I put out stuff so that I could actually become a coach and somebody in the industry, that I could do this as my life. Without that education, I couldn't have done it.
You give us a lot of information there, especially because like you say there, like most people go down the mainstream educational route because they expect to be handed a job at the end of it. But for you, it sounds like it actually took exactly what you were wanting to do and just showed you exactly what you didn't want to do, which is well, it's amazing that way. In terms of going back to that question as well, like, I was actually going to spark the question of, like, you stepped away from social media but somehow still ended up with a client base, but you clearly put in the work beforehand. Do you think that there is a balance there for new coaches coming into the industry where, you know, of course the information they're putting out is going to be helpful to actually create leads to bring in clients, but also just spending a bit more time on their overall education? And if so, where would you point a new coach? Like, what direction would you point them in terms of, like, what would be your first bit of, like, advice for education? Like, where would you send them? Would you send a prescript? Would you send them to a certain coach, etc.?
So for most coaches getting into, I'll start with the social media part first, is that if you're going to be building a business in this, then you have to be present. So one of the things that me stepping away personally did was it slowed down inquiries a lot, which was good. It was not good for my bottom line. I could have definitely made a lot more money if I just pushed on it more and more and never stopped, for sure. But if I had only focused on that, then I wouldn't have had the ability for me to go and expand into other things and do a better job for the people that I was already working with. That wouldn't have gotten me the referrals that would have kept my business alive and would have continued to be the lifeblood of it to this day. Wouldn't be able to build the reputation doing the job that I do because I wouldn't do it as well. So there has to be a balance there. It is a marketing tool. It is the way that you get seen. It is the way that you can pull people in and be interested in you, what you have to offer, and who you are, so that you can get people to buy in and trust you enough to hand over the reins of their daily life to you. That's a high bar of trust, but part of the trust needs to be that you actually have something to deliver. And you can't deliver anything if you're working off of purely platitudes or one-liners that you've learned from other people, and then using neuro-linguistic programming tactics for you to get people to buy in to your coaching because you're marketing it like any other business that you find on social media. That's going to be part of it, and the better you do at that, the more inquiries you're going to get. But what quality are you going to get? What kind of people are you going to have? And what are they expecting of you? If you set up your expectations in a way that sounds good, but you can't deliver, then that's not going to help you at all in the long run, but it'll give you a presence. You need to have the education. So now I can get to the education piece. So first places that I would go to, if you haven't already done any formal education, going to a school for a program for exercise science and physiology, I would actually say that it's a good idea. And you don't have to do it with a brick and mortar building university that you have to go to. You can find a course online that has the major materials that you can do, that's far cheaper, that's accessible, that you can do on your own time. Do it. I will say that one of the biggest things that I got from my formal education was that I had to learn a lot of things that I didn't want to learn. And a lot of those things that I didn't want to learn are things that are really, really important for you to understand. You're not going to want to learn about all of the really, really deep stuff because it's not usually that interesting. If you don't learn the basic mechanics of things, then you don't understand things at scale. You can understand outcomes, but not the reasons why you reached it. And if you're dealing with things that are more complicated than, like, because most people that are coaching too, you're not going to be able to niche yourself down into only handling one very specific aspect only of a process without covering other things. And if you are, then you're going to have a problem with retaining people because the value that you provide is limited. If you don't understand how to reach outcomes in a more convoluted path because it's a requirement of you, then you won't be able to get the outcomes that you thought you could in the first place. You won't reach it. So learning basic physiology, chemistry, physics, mechanics, all are going to be important. You're not going to want to learn it. You're going to want to learn it in small bites that you can get from people that present it in a little bit more digestible fashion, which is fine. But it's also going to be higher level pieces that you won't have a placement for. So I went through also the prescript education, and I did that fairly early on. The only reason that all made sense to me was because I already did the formal education that taught me mechanics. That was the only way. I knew physiology, I knew anatomy, and I knew mechanics. Without that education formally, I would not have understood it. And a lot of people that will go into it will learn enough that they can get some concepts down for sure, because they package it up very well. They do an exceptional job. And I would still point anyone that doesn't go the formal education route, still go there. Go to Prescript, learn from them for all of the training related material that you want to see, so that you can help people better and you can learn fundamental tools. But a lot of it is going to go over your head. And when it goes over your head, you're going to have to learn it still. Go ahead, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I can vouch for that there. I didn't actually know what Prescript was. I get invited by a friend to go on this like seminar weekend in Rotherham in the UK, and I was like, it's sick. All the bodybuilders and stuff are there. Like, don't have a clue who the fuck Jordan Challows is or all these other guys. Showed up to the weekend, and by the end of it my brain was so fried that I ended up messaging Jordan and was like, can you have a call with me, because there's a lot of stuff you talked about I just don't even have a fucking clue what you were talking about. And he was just like, yeah, like, these things just don't matter yet for you, but I'm glad that you came to it, because, and I'm glad I went as well, because it definitely opened up my aspects of coaching to be like, okay, there's so much outside of just PTing people for an hour, like, yeah, so much. And also to even meet people in the industry as well. Like, it was the first time I'd met people who were online coaches and had 50 to 100 clients. I was like, this is actually possible. I was like, I just thought that coaches made an hourly rate on the gym floor and that was it. There wasn't much more than that there. It was a massive eye opener. But yeah, I can definitely vouch that and say that, you know, doing the Prescript was a fucking huge eye opener, but I probably should have had a wee bit of due diligence or some sort of pre-education to that there. But it definitely sparked an interest and had a light bulb moment of where I needed to get more education from there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I would still send people there, absolutely. So listeners, if you want to learn stuff about training and how to help people, especially with very niche issues, go to them. If you want to understand what you're looking at when you're on the gym floor with somebody, knowing the information that they can teach you there is going to be really, really important. It'll be absolutely pivotal in your ability to look at issues and be able to solve them for somebody that otherwise you would just shrug your shoulders at and be like, I don't know, dude. Like, this should work, but I don't know why it isn't. So I guess we just try again, or we just do this other thing that I don't know why it's different, but it is, so we're going to try it. And you just trial and error until you find something that might work, but you don't exactly know why. Still pivotal, but you're going to have two different kinds of people, maybe more, but I'll give two categories. Is you'll have you, Donald, that will go to that and go, holy cow, I didn't know all this. I should probably do a little bit more digging to understand this stuff, because this looks like it's going to be incredibly helpful for me, but I don't know where to place it yet. You'll have that. But then you'll also have people that'll just get overwhelmed and be like, I could do this job without this, so I think I'm gonna.
Yeah.
It's just the reality. So, and it's going to be more likely that you fall into that camp, not even just from a lack of care, but just from being so overwhelmed by it while also having some level of evidence that, I mean, there's a million other people that are dumber than me that are doing this job. I don't think they know any of this. They're doing all right, so I guess I probably can get away with it too. And if you're already trying to deal with the realities of what running your own business is, like, I have so many things that I need to be worried about. I can't spend 5 hours a day trying to learn what all of this terminology is and how this all works. If I can't get it in an hour a day or an hour a week from the calls that are done, then this is just too much time to spend for something that's not giving me anything immediate. And that's not entirely, I will still say that that's a problem, but that's not entirely something you can blame somebody for that's really just doing a job that they want to put food on their table with. And there's a lot of people that are going to fall into that camp, and there's enough reasons why you might fall there. So that's why I say, for you to really make good use out of a lot of the educational materials that you can get access to these days, of which there's a ton, having that formal education really helps. Because then you don't have a choice to some degree. You just kind of have to do it. And if you have to do it, whether you like it or not, you're gonna do it. If you're gonna do it and you come away with frameworks that can place everything else that you learn from that point, it makes you doing these extra continuing education things a lot easier for you to integrate into the way you understand. Without it, it's just another portion of your brain that is cluttered up with stuff that you don't know how to place, that you think you can draw on because you've seen it once, but I don't know how that applies. I don't know. It's going to be better. So again, Prescript definitely would point people there. Get as much education from those dudes as possible. They're geniuses. They know what they're doing. They produce awesome athletes. They get a lot of people out of pain, and they help people to level up their game tremendously. Make sure that if you do, though, that you do dig in and learn the things that are already presuppositions that you already understood. Because they're going to be teaching you things at a high level, even at their level ones, that you need to be able to go and dig into for you to place it. So do that. Then other education platforms like J3U is a good place that you could go. Those guys are great at what they do. They've got a lot of information, a lot of similar stuff, though, is that you're going to have to do some due diligence to make sure that what they're saying makes sense. Going to somebody like The Blueprint with Dom Kuza, great place to go. A lot of knowledge there. Go there, learn a whole lot of stuff. If you don't understand physiology at all, you're gonna struggle. It's gonna be really hard. You're not gonna integrate all of it. So, and there's a ton of other places and people that you could go to. If you were to go onto like Jordan Peters' website, the old days, I haven't been on there in a very long time, but there's information in there that would help you to build out some basic concepts as well. You learn stuff from, what's his, man, I have his book. He's great. Dr. Scott Stevenson. Yes. Learn from him everything that you can from any place that you could find it. Buy his books, read them, and then integrate that. Go to the 3DMJ guys, get their books, read what they have to say, look at their lecture material and online platforms. Go get into the article aggregators. So you're looking at the Stronger by Science people like Greg Knuckles and Eric Trexler and Eric Helms, also from 3DMJ. Look at those guys. Read what they have to say. Make sense of the research as it comes out. Those are great people and great places to go so you can get a knowledge base that is far beyond what you currently have. Great opportunities are out there. But again, all of it is dependent on just how much more legwork you will do so you can place it. It counts for everything.
And to bring it back slightly to training and bodybuilding, people that just want to get really good at training, want to be bodybuilders, a question I have for you is around optimization of training. And maybe 10 years ago it was squat, bench, deadlift, these things you need to do, just get strong. And now it's all about analysing biomechanics, resistance profiles, which is very good. But do you think the pendulum has maybe swung too far the other way
Yep.
at the moment? And this optimization rabbit hole around training can be something that's maybe problematic as well, and invites that paralysis by analysis that you were speaking on earlier as well.
Yep. It does. Absolutely. It does. Uh, the pendulum will swing back, which is the good thing about the whole industry is that everything goes full circle every time, all the time. But it's also a good thing that when we go through these pendulum swings, a lot of the lessons that still stick will be retained every time that it does swing. And the people that actually applied the information and found out whether it was good or not are going to retain it even as the pendulum swings the other direction. So the optimization and mechanics has been really, really super helpful because up to the point where it became relevant, it wasn't a factor at all that people cared about. We didn't have the language in the common parlance for the people in the bodybuilding world to understand any of it. But now it's more common knowledge, so you can talk to a bodybuilder at most any level, and you can talk about basic actions, and they'll know what it is. They know what flexion is. They know what extension is. They know what internal and external rotation is. They know what the names of joints are. They know what the names of bones are. They can tell you a lot more now than they ever could have in the past. And this makes them a lot better at what they do. So it's been exceptionally helpful for that because we didn't have any of those things prior to it. But it does produce its own issues. And it's the same problem that I described earlier, where if you learn enough about one thing to the degree that you understand it very well, or at least you believe you do, now you're going to exclude all the other portions of the conversation that should be had because you don't understand it nearly as well. If you don't have the language for it, you don't know how to place it, you don't know where ideas conflict or they balance one another, you're not going to make good decisions using the information. So it's led us to a place where a lot of different factors have come in to play their role, but we now have a whole generation of guys that are following very strict rules over what they do that don't really apply. So kind of similar to what you brought up with coaches marketing for them getting people to stage, not having to push their food low and not having to do cardio. You say the same thing with training. It's like you can get huge on 4 sets a week of this body part and nothing else, and that's it. Okay, because you understand a mechanism for mechanical tension now. You think that mechanical tension at such a limited number of times is going to be enough always to summate enough stimulation for you to grow. No shot. Nope. Some timeline it'll work. The whole timeline, it will not. You don't know that unless you experience it and you try it for yourself or you see it enough times for you to understand it. So we have a whole giant group of people now, a whole generation, that are growing up learning those principles and thinking that they're concrete and not knowing the basic physiology that actually dictates whether or not they work. And they're going to misapply it for a lot longer than what they should. And that will beget the pendulum swing because people will become disillusioned with the methods that they're using because it's not producing the results that they thought they were going to in the timeline that they used it in. You can get promised that, hey, you can do 4 sets to failure on this body part every week, and that's it from now on, and you will grow bigger than anyone else you've ever seen because this is the superior way and no one's tried it before. But you go 3 years doing that, and then you're like, I didn't actually grow past like the first 6 months of doing that. So what do I do now? You now have enough time for you to have experienced the positive and the negatives of using that approach. So you can now figure a better way because you have to play with some sort of a lever that you thought was off limits for you to pull until you've experienced that that one lever alone being pulled and the rest of them untouched is no longer working. Then go ahead, Emmett.
I was going to say, I think an issue with it as well is maybe people see the likes of yourself who are lifting heavier loads, which require then, it's going to cause a lot more stress and a lot more fatigue, which then you're going to use a lower volume and lower set amount. total amount of sets because of that, and then other people see that and see like the success you're having with it, and they may jump onto it and copy it and just then take a low volume approach, but they haven't yet got the strength, got the technique to really earn the right to do so. So I think there comes a point as well. Do you think that doing as much as you can within your recovery capabilities, and especially for beginners, they maybe just need to do a little bit more than maybe 2 sets
Yeah.
for every exercise?
Yeah, absolutely. And I will add an extra detail in there that I do a far higher volume than what people would imagine that I do as well. So I don't have a direct correlation as an example of myself that being stronger means that I have to do less volume. Not not really. I mean, if I wanted to do it that way, then I could, but no. On most body parts, I'm sitting in the moderate to higher target range for total volume.
Okay.
For quads, I'm doing 12, 16 sets in a week, probably. Hamstrings, pretty similar, a little bit lower than that. Chest, same thing. Back, more than that. Biceps, triceps, delts, all of it more than that. And you'd have the idea maybe that you lift so much load on something, like hack squatting 8 plates aside on a side back. Oh, you can only do that for a single set and you're absolutely fucked after, and now you do no other quad work. Okay, no. I'll do 3 sets of a hack squat even with that being my first set.
Okay.
And I'll have a leg press in that same day. And I'll have leg extensions in that same day. And I'll have a deadlift variation in the same day. And I'll have adductors for 3 or 4 sets on that same day. Yeah, so it doesn't really make that much of a skew. It just depends on
Okay.
how far in your relative strength you have to push.
Yeah. I think because you love training as well, you're willing to do a bit more, whereas maybe some people just want to, almost a path of least resistance. They want to do as little as they possibly can.
Mhm.
So that it's not that they need to do 2 sets, they just want to get out of the gym a bit quicker, and maybe don't enjoy being there as much as well.
Yeah, yeah, and also the overstimulation issue is a problem with this. The same way I described it earlier. And I also, the way that you stated that is very apt. Also, I on a podcast recently that I was on, I was asked a question of give in the shortest way possible your entire philosophy on training. And my answer to that question was, how much can you do and how well can you do it? That's
Yeah.
always it. Yeah. So, and I tell my own athletes all the time, I'll have new inquiries come in and they'll give me, because I have a question in my intakes asking how much time, how many days of the week can you train, and for how long on those days can you train? So I have an idea of how much I can actually program for them. And every time that I see an intake that says that I have a hard limit, I can't train for more than an hour, I will tell them in their initial setup that this is fine. I will give you a program for that. But I'm telling you right now, if you imagine that you're going to get to your highest muscular potential with that limit, you're not. I will say to you as a guarantee, you will not. You're putting a limit on what your physiology can handle based off of the time that you can do. And that is not a way for you to guarantee that you maximize your potential. You're going to need more time than that in almost every single case. You're going to need more volume. You're going to need more time to be able to rest. If you don't have those abilities to push on them because because your life is actually this way and you don't have a choice, or you're putting an artificial barrier on it because you don't want to do more, you're going to be limiting yourself for reasons that has nothing to do with your physiology. How much can you do is always going to be the limit for what you can actually grow to. If you're undershooting it consistently, for whatever reason it might be, you are not going to grow to the potential you could. Guaranteed.
So do as much as you can, as hard as you can, for as long as you can, and just it's a game. I think bodybuilding of rinse and repeating as well. And how long can you do the thing? Almost like a war of attrition. And I think I heard you spoke as well. You speaking as well about bodybuilding being very neurotic and requiring a lot of patience too. Um, so yeah, but then also at the same time, I think you almost like a contradiction, but it's probably true as well that you need to have other interests outside of bodybuilding, as well as having to be meticulous within bodybuilding. And how would you say that you would advise striking that? How do you strike that balance? Because it can be it can be a difficult one to try and master, especially when you're so hyper focused on bodybuilding and just being the best you can be.
So, first of all, there's going to be phases of life for people. And if you're in a phase of life that bodybuilding is the one thing that energizes you the most, lean into it. That's perfectly fine to lean into it. If you're one dimensional entirely, and at every family gathering and every friend that you talk to is like everything that you know about bodybuilding, you're going to annoy some people, but it's energizing you at a deeper level than you just trying to humdrum your way through things that you don't care about. It's giving you purpose, it's giving you something to care about, and that's good for you. And if you don't go through phases where it consumes you to some degree, you're never going to understand it to the degree that you're going to want to in the long term anyways. You limit yourself artificially because hypothetically I will be a better person if I know more things in other realms where I go and have other hobbies, but it's not actually doing anything for you internally, then it's just a hypothetical benefit that you're not actually getting. You're going to go through phases in your life where some things are going to be more important to you than others, and it should be that way. So when you have that activation that the only thing that you care about is bodybuilding, love bodybuilding. Make it your thing. Because if you make it your thing enough, you can really do something with it. If you care about all the details and you apply it to the greatest degree that you can, and you really want to take it there, you can become a better athlete than you may have ever thought you could be. You may become a better educator than you ever thought you could be. You can be a better coach than you ever thought you could be, because you're doing something that you genuinely care about enough that you're going to dig into it, even when otherwise, if you weren't activated to do so, you wouldn't. That's good. Now for the balance, when you get to a point where you don't have that anymore, but you're trying to force it because you feel like, because you've identified yourself with that feeling of being the bodybuilder, being the person that cares about all this stuff. It's all the media you consume. It's the only thing that you're really, really interested in. And now you have a natural drift where none of those things are giving you that same fulfillment anymore. And now you've attached that identity of you being that person with you having all of this interest there, but now you don't. It feels like you have to abandon both instead of just being okay with the fact that it's not the thing that is activating you like that anymore. You don't have to know the reason why yet. You just need to know that you don't have to let go of them both. So one of the things that happens with a lot of athletes of mine that I've had to talk to, especially as the populations of people I work with continue to age with me and get older, is there's this conflict that I have to talk through often. That, hey, I think I'm kind of on my last legs of bodybuilding. I don't know if this is something I really want to do anymore. I think I'm just going to just do other stuff. I just don't care. Like, okay, why? Like, well, I don't think I'm going to compete every year from now on. I don't think it matters, so I don't think I'm going to train anymore. Did you start this because you wanted to just be on stage? Do you isolate the benefits of this lifestyle to only being a competitor, or only living this exact lifestyle where all of these things completely encompass this? And now you're rejecting all of it because you want to fit other things in and you can't see how it's done because it's consumed you completely all the way to now? If that's the case, then what is it that you would say to the 40-year-old father of 3 or mother of 3 that is in really bad shape but wants to be able to get in good shape, be healthy, so that they can be there for their kids to watch them grow up? What do you tell to them? Are you going to say like, oh, it doesn't matter, just be there for your kids? Like, okay, but what about the problem that's staring you in the face? They're not being active enough. They're not training. They're not doing any cardio to help their cardiovascular health or their metabolic health either. They're not doing resistance training to help keep their brain online and keep them fed properly, then keep their tissues, their bones, and their muscles from deteriorating over time. You're not having any of the benefits from those things, but now you just ignore that because the thing that you care about is being there for your kids? No. You tell that person, like, you can integrate this into your life while doing all the other things. It just needs to integrate into your life, not control it and be the only thing that matters. You can still engage in training. You can still do cardio. You can still get steps. You can still track your food and be reasonable with things and take care of supplementation and be on top of sleep schedules. Like, you could do all these things that bodybuilders build up in our heads as like, this is so hard. This is so consuming. You're living a normal life, dude. You're living a human life taking care of yourself. You're just inundating all of your focus with extraneous details for how to do these things that you could run on autopilot. You waking up in the morning and going to bed at night, you still have to do. How much does it affect you that you keep those times intact and you try to keep your sleep architecture proper? It doesn't. It's just you living a normal life. Are you going to eat 3 meals a day? Yeah, you still are. What does it matter if you actually know what those foods are and how much you're eating? It's still going to happen anyway. Do it. Do you have an hour that you can spend doing some sort of physical activity? Yeah, you can. So why don't you do that? But you could still do it like a bodybuilder. You just don't have to obsess over it and think about, oh, do I need exactly this amount of grams of salt in this meal so that by the time I train, I do or do not have to have an extra dash of pink salt? How much is that going to change my blood pressure? Is that going to make me feel weird in my training? That, like, you just stop doing that and everything else works.
Do you think that's, by the sense of it, you're maybe on the side of the fence where it's more to do with, you know, the stresses it's going to put on their life as they transition into, I don't know, maybe parenthood or, you know, getting older, etc. But do you think sometimes it actually comes from the opposite end of it, where they held themselves to such a high pedestal with bodybuilding, to where they knew that they had a good potential, that they were able to be great athletes, and the stress of actually not being able to live up to that anymore just becomes too much, and they would rather step away from the sport?
Yeah, absolutely. That happens a lot too. That happens a lot. And that's another thing that is solved through the same means. Because people will, it's an identity issue.
Mm-hmm.
Both of them are an identity issue. If you've seen what your potential is, you think you can go somewhere, you've been held back by this, that, or the other, but you know that there's something that's unfulfilled, and now you feel like everything in your life is not really as fulfilling or worth it because this one thing is not there, then that's just you bucking against an identity that you feel you deserve to live. And you built that up for yourself, pursuing something that you can decide how much it matters to you, but really, in the grand scheme, what's it matter? It's a pursuit for all of us to care about and for us to do, but like, it's a played out thing to say, but does it matter how many plastic trophies you've gotten? Does it matter how many medals you've gotten for a show that most people aren't going to care about you doing? No. It's going to be great for you, and that's cool, but it's only as important to you as you give it that importance for yourself. And there's plenty of other things that you can have interests in that can give you the same fulfillment that doesn't require that of you. And if you have to get rid of the whole thing for you to feel like you're whole again, then you're rejecting an entire part of yourself and an entire part of your life that you don't have to lose just because you don't have this standard for this identity that you wanted to be that you never reached. The cold reality is that the majority of everybody alive is not going to reach the ideal that we have in our heads for what we could achieve. And that's in every single aspect of our life anyway. You could have in your head all of the you said parenthood, you could have in your head being the absolute perfect parent, and then you hold yourself to that standard, and by the end of your life you could look back and go, oh, I could have not yelled at my daughter like that one time, and I'm a shitty person for having done that, and I didn't live up to my standards, and it's not even worth it. I shouldn't even care about this anymore. Are you going to do that? No. It doesn't make any sense. At least I hope you wouldn't. If you're going to do the same thing with any other pursuit you've ever done because you didn't live up to it, then that's just a recipe for anybody that does it to resent everything they ever cared about. So if you cared about it, you have a higher ideal you're shooting towards. If you have a higher ideal you're shooting towards, every time that you reach any sort of objective goal, there's going to be another one higher. If you win an Olympia, what is the next thing? There's somebody that's won more than you. Yeah. There's the second one. And how good are you now that you won the Olympia? That's cool. But how many other Olympians have won more than one Olympia than you? Now you're going to be against the legacy of whoever's gotten more than you. Okay, there's a higher ideal. And if you don't reach that, now is all of your efforts not worth it anymore? Should you have not cared about it in the first place? That's just trying to attach to a higher ideal than what was realistic for you, for whatever reason it might have been, that should not invalidate every effort and everything you cared about up to that point. It's just a nihilistic and fatalistic way of looking at things if immediately when your identity is challenged for the ideal you want to get to is no longer a reality. So if you want to have balance as somebody that gets into this, lean into it as much as you can when it's the highest purpose for you. Because it can give you, like it did for me, when I was young and I didn't have anything else that activated me. Like I live my life now. Thank you. I don't.
We're still young.
Yeah, well, we're still young. I've aged a little bit more than you guys, but thank you to stress and anabolics for that. But for when I was growing up, I didn't have anything that activated me that made me want to participate in the larger world around me. There was nothing that did that until I came into training and then found that I loved bodybuilding more than I enjoyed doing the sports that I did the training for. And then that brought me into really wanting to understand everything about it, and it was everything that I did. And I went to school for it, and then I built that into this whole portion of my life that I'm in now. And it's been a motivating force behind me the entire time, and it's given me the life that I live. If I didn't lean into it because I thought like I have to be this polymath that understands all of these other things and is this well-rounded, so I got into Greek literature instead in high school, like, okay, where would I be now? Not here. I wouldn't be here. And I think that for being here, there's a lot to be said for how much I let that consume me. It wasn't healthy, not in the long term, but that's also why I pivoted. Because there were things that I knew that I was missing, and as that gap became more and more apparent to me, where the same things that I had talked about a million times, said the same things, had the same conversations with the same people over the same things, like this is no longer the thing that activates me as much as it did. Because there wasn't anything more to say that was really feeding me anymore. So when that happened, I didn't just go, oh my God, like my life is over, because this ideal of who I was going to be is the person with the answer to absolutely everything on this only one thing. That illusion dissolved, and I figured like I could probably do more, and I could probably understand more things, and I could make sense of the world around me more and be a larger participant in it to a greater degree. And all these deficiencies that are becoming more apparent that I'm scared to look at are now things that are enjoyable, that are motivating forces that bring me into doing more things and doing better at the thing I originally cared about. Because I did all those other things and went down the other paths, I can do my job better. I can relate to people better. I can have conversations with people that aren't directly interested in only this one thing in the way that I was, and have a fruitful conversation. Like those weren't things I was capable of back then. Better person for it. So to your question, Emmett, that's how you navigate. You follow what energizes you for the length of time that you have it, and then once it no longer does, don't let the identity that you built around it dictate every decision you make from there, and allow yourself to shift what that means.
To quote a friend of me in Emmett's, it's a blessing to be young and obsessed and so confident to give up a big part of your life to actually pursue that. And I think a lot of young coaches need to actually realize that it's not bad to dig in on something that you absolutely love and sacrifice parts of your life for it, because as you say, like once it gets to the point where maybe it doesn't consume you as much, like it's going to teach you a lesson that, you know, you can jump to the next best thing, the thing that you want to do next. And they also quote he's a Muay Thai fighter, but Nico Carrillo, like he talks about the pursuing of the next big goal. Like he's a world champion in Muay Thai, and he was like, well, I'm just going to do the same thing in kickboxing now. And people are like, why? And he's like, because I want to go and do something hard and just continue doing hard things until I can't do hard things anymore.
Yep. And if you don't let the ideal for what you thought you were going to be dictate everything, and you can change what that is, you're a lot more resilient person with all the changes that your life will go through. So it's a big thing with bodybuilders. We have an identity
caught
crisis.
In the box.
You have an identity crisis as soon as you can't do the thing anymore, and people will chase it until it might kill them, and it happens. Specifically in the enhanced world, a lot more than the natural world, but it happens there too. Keep chasing it.
Just give up.
Yeah. Yep. And that's an unfortunate end that happens to a lot of people.
It's good to have other interests in outside of bodybuilding, and probably makes you a better bodybuilder overall and a better person in the long run.
It does. It does. And for the coaches, embrace that when it happens. I wouldn't say that it's always a bad thing that your interest in what you're doing changes, because you'll find ways that it's going to integrate into what you do so that you can do a better job for the people that already trust you.
So, for the circle conversation here, you're telling us that it's fine to go down the route of doing Hyrox?
Yeah, it is. It is. It is totally fine to go that direction because there's a lot of good reasons for it. There's a lot of good reasons. We can still mock the fact that they're hybrid rock stars, and that's about the dumbest thing that you could label yourself, I think. It's pretty ridiculous that fully grown adults are deciding to change themselves to hybrid rock stars when typically they're not good enough at any part of it to be a rock star in the first place. But, you know, for the reasons that it's popular, it has good reasons as well as it does bad. I don't really like it, but who knows? In the future, I might be a marathon runner. We never know. Probably won't. It's probably unlikely. But
do you see yourself, Nick? Sorry, jump in. Do you see yourself doing the bodybuilding and being part of your life for a long time?
Can you repeat the first part of that? You cut a little bit.
Sorry. Do you see bodybuilding being a large part of what you do for many years? Yep. I do. What it's already done is, at this point in time for me, it has changed a lot with how I frame it for myself. Because with my work as a coach, that had completely taken over pretty much my entire personal pursuit of bodybuilding, and it consumed it to the level that I don't have really the personal aspirations towards it like I once did. I wanted to be, when I was young, I wanted to be an Olympia level competitor. I don't really believe that that's likely to happen because of the time left that I would have for me to be able to do that with the dedication to the highest level that would be required. And what that would take from the rest of my life to do so is unlikely to be sustainable for long enough for me to do it, which is okay. At one point in time, that really, really bothered me a lot. But at this point in time, I have a lot larger things that I care about now that matter to me a lot more than attempting towards that goal. And I get to live vicariously through the people I get to help to achieve those goals, which doesn't feel as sweet initially when you feel like people are doing things that you can't do because they have a different opportunity in life than you do. But as you embrace that role and you don't attach yourself to the identity of being the person that was going to do it, it doesn't sting. It actually becomes something that you're really proud to be a part of and really happy to see for other people because it's something that you can provide, or otherwise it might have just been something that you stumbled your way through yourself. It's pretty cool to be able to do those things. And working through the last couple of years for me, allowing my identity to shift and how I relate to bodybuilding has made it far less pivotal for me to understand who I am with the lens of bodybuilding always being there. And it's been something I've worked very, very hard to be able to build up,
so that if something catastrophic did happen, that I wouldn't have a personal identity crisis that made me feel like I was not a person worth being here if it were taken from me. If I were to lose my legs in a car accident, I'd be okay. It'd be the worst thing to ever happen to me, that's for sure. But I'd be okay. If I had acute kidney failure and I had that kind of a problem that definitely precludes using any sort of anabolics anymore, I'd be okay. If I had some other health condition that came up that precludes me from doing these things at a high level, I would be okay. That wouldn't have been the case a handful of years ago when that was a primary driver behind everything I did. And that took a lot of time. That took a lot of work. It took a lot of looking at what was missing for me so that I didn't have to latch onto that identity of who I thought I was going to be and having my whole worth bound to exactly that only goal. And now other things give me joy.
Mate, that's extremely enlightening. So it is to actually hear that, because you do hear about people on the negative side of things way too often. They hear the positive side of it of life just goes on. Really, is from what I can take from what you're saying, is that it doesn't matter what happens. There's always going to be a positive. There's always going to be another day where you actually sound a bit hippy dippy, but smile.
Hippy dippy is good, man.
Mm-hmm.
Hippy dippy is good. They're happier people.
Yeah,
it's okay. It's okay to take from them that they're happier people, not for always the reasons that they are. You probably shouldn't be dropping acid enough that the division between your imagined world and reality is so skewed that you don't know. That's not usually a good reason to be happy all the time, but having some understanding that time is something that will pass anyways, and what you do with it is the only thing that dictates what your life is at the end. And if you obsess over one thing that you don't actually achieve, and that's the benchmark for all of your happiness from that point forward, then you miss everything else that time was there to show you.
Amazing. Actually, well, to be honest, I think it's a brilliant point to almost close on, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
We have a bit of a finishing question that was sort of lined up. I'm happy to ask it unless you want to, Emmett.
Go ahead. I just wanted to say we've landed on today's Falkland lay. Today's Irish word of the day will be sasu, which means fulfillment. And I think in finding fulfillment in what you do in the conversation we've had is probably one of the big takeaways that I've taken from it. Go ahead, Donald.
That's a good pull. I like that.
Nice. One coaching principle that you tattoo on every new coach's forearm. What is it?
A principle for every new coach?
Yeah. Very on the spot.
Yeah, but it's good. I like a challenge.
It's not quite 800 pounds, but it's something.
That's far easier in some ways.
Just get under the bar and squat.
Yeah, don't think too much. That's definitely not my principle that people have to take away. I'm not going to say that. For a new coach getting into this and trying to get somewhere, I would say the principle to take away is to lean into what you're actually interested in at the time, so you don't know where it'll lead you, and do the legwork for you to make something of it, rather than just be a voyeur on the outside of the journey. Because there's way too much of that, and that's a social media thing, round circle all the way again. It's too easy to be a consumer of things at surface level without making sense of things underneath it. And if you can only do surface level consumption, then you'll never be able to produce anything worthwhile yourself.
What a brilliant way to finish. Thank you very much, mate, for your time. It's actually been probably one of our best podcasts yet, I would say. And I'm not just blowing smoke up your hole, because it actually has been. I'm sure it was more than worth your time, Emmett, getting up at 1 in the morning.
2 in the morning, absolutely. I think I might just stay up because I have a bit of a buzz now after a great conversation. Nick, if you want to just let people know where they can find you.
Sure. You can find me at Nick Gloff on Instagram, just my name, NICKGLOFF, and you can find all of my coaching and the exercise library for my platform on teamgloff.com. So that's pretty much everywhere that you can find me. If you want to reach out, you can send me a DM on Instagram, or you can send in an email to nick@teamgloff.com.
Awesome.
Lovely stuff.
Nick, again, thank you very much for the time, brother. Much appreciated, and I hope you have a great day. Also, good luck with the moving as well. I know it was quickly glanced across, but wherever you're moving to, hope it goes well.
Yeah, thank you. It's a smooth chaos so far. So
Good.
okay. You guys have
All
a
right,
good one.
Nick,
Slán go
thank
for
you.
it. That's Irish
Appreciate
for
it.
goodbye.
Slán.
Slán.
See you later, mate.